Hi everybody, I'm Dennis O'Malley. I'm helping Chairman Donnchadh and his committee to host this Zoom gathering. It's 1 p.m. in Rare Cross, County Tipperary, Ireland, on a lovely sunny summer's day. By contrast, I'm told it's 10 p.m. and a winter's evening, a dark winter's evening in Geelong and Melbourne and Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Going west to the United States, it's 5 a.m. in California, where Mary Kennedy lives. It's 8 a.m. in New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, where Maureen Kennedy and Congressman Joe reside. I'll hand you over now to Chief Rody to inaugurate the gathering.
Good day, everybody from Rare Cross, sunny Rare Cross again. Welcome to everybody on our first virtual Kennedy clan gathering. Our condolences go to relatives of the late Andy Kennedy, Melbourne, Australia, who passed away recently and was just 7 weeks short of 100. Rest in peace to him. I would like to take this opportunity to wish Congressman Joe Kennedy good luck and success in the upcoming Senate election, and we would vote for him if we could. So we'll hand you on now to the next stage of this virtual. Thank you.
As the Seanchai, or historian and storyteller of the Irish Kennedys, it is my very great pleasure to welcome Kennedys and their relations and well-wishers to the 9th annual gathering of the Irish Kennedys. Since 2012, the gatherings of the Irish Kennedys have been held in the Anglesey Lounge at Chief Rody Kennedy's in Rare Cross, County Tipperary. On this occasion, we are conducting a gathering using the technology now available to us because of the unordinary circumstances in which we are being affected today. So we cannot convene in person, so we're all here together in virtual reality. I should add, this is not the first time since the year 1000 in the history of the Irish Kennedys that the activities have been affected by extreme influences from outside. Some of these have been plagues, some of them have been invasions, and some of them have been decrees. How can we all forget the decree to hell or to Connaught? For each of the previous gatherings, I have travelled from Australia to Ireland to speak to the assembled people, and many people from various countries have also attended the gatherings as their situations allowed. They came from Australia, they came from the United States, they came from Great Britain, they came from all sorts of places. When we begin the gatherings, we did not have a chief, or a Seanchai, or an Irish Kennedy Heritage Group. We didn't have a committee. We simply had a number of people who all had a significant interest in the history of the Irish Kennedy family. In the intervening time, I have been nominated as the Seanchai of the Irish Kennedys. I was nominated by Rody Kennedy's mother, Breda, the late Breda Kennedy. We were sitting outside the hotel one afternoon enjoying a conversation with a number of people when Breeder announced to everyone, "Brian is our Seanchai, our historian and our storyteller." Under the ancient responsibilities of this position in 2014, I conducted the inauguration of Rody Kennedy as Chief of the Irish Kennedys. Working with a group of committed Kennedys, we set up the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group in 2015. This group is now managing the activities to ensure that the history of the Irish Kennedys is preserved and is fostered. That is the purpose of this gathering. 100,000 welcomes to all of our participants.
Well, accordia, Walam falta curoid glare o kien agus o congur don crinu savalta, clown ducas I Canada, fihe is o cod starul e unshahanuv. On behalf of the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group, I would like to welcome everyone from far and near to this historical occasion. It is a complete change of living style for us. So as our well-laid plans for 2020 had to be abandoned, our boating cruise up the Shannon, following in the footsteps of Brian Boru, High King of Ireland in the 10th and 11th century. It was on the Shannon where Brian first engaged the Danes. In Salahead, County Tipperary, he defeated them in a battle and then followed them into Limerick, where normally speaking, at the end of the battle, they would all go home, but he didn't. He followed them into Limerick and annihilated them. I think he frightened the living daylights out of them at that stage, where years later, again, of course, he defeated them decisively at the Battle of Clontarf. Brian Boru, I suppose, was a man classed as a war chief, but he was also a musician. He had culture about him because he commissioned a number of writers to copy manuscripts that were in over near Adair at the time. So he was a cultural man and he was also a musician. We've made different plans as a result of the coronavirus and this new method of communication, Zoom, and we are very grateful to Alan Dormer, Leanne Daly, Mick and Dennis O'Malley and their team for providing this platform for us to host a virtual Kennedy Heritage Gathering 2020. During this coronavirus period, also I want to thank Chief Rody as well for providing his premises for this occasion here in Rare Cross. And I know Rody was made chief of the clan, but he does more than that. He provides facilities for us for all our committee meetings. And like all good chiefs, he doesn't get a shilling for it. So he's doing it on a kind of a graduate thing anyway for us. So, but we're very grateful to Rody for the facilities that he do provide for us all down the years there for our meetings and for the gatherings that we have had in the past. As chairperson of the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group, we have an excellent working committee, and our PRO, Tom, will fill you in on the membership of the Kennedys and the Kennedy Castle. For my part, I want to acknowledge the great work that has been done by Brian Patrick Kennedy over the last 30 years or more. He has researched in great detail the Cromwellian plantation, where we were defranchised when our ancestors were forced into the mountains and glens, into the booley bands, which means a safe and protected pastures. Because in them days where they were sent to, there was no roads in there, so nobody could follow them in anyway. We have our castles, but we also have our graveyards. And our graveyards are equally as important because that is where you'll get a certain amount of information that's not maybe held in other places. Sometimes we had to use, when they were defranchised and moved, their own burial places were often weren't able to get back to, so they acquired the assistance of various churchyards. and one of them would be Laura's Dominican Priory, Ballinaclough, Eglish, Terryglass, Kilkerry, Temple Derry's Protestant graveyard where Long Andrew is buried. Not alone does Brian know a great deal of live Kennedys, but he's also very connected with the dead Kennedys as well, because he has a huge amount of research done on both live and dead Kennedys. Having done the research, Brian has documented all his work in 7 books, a huge task to undertake. For people who are listening in, our heritage is very important to us because our ancient monuments go back over 5,000 years. Our language is older than Latin and Greek. We were persecuted in the 15th century for our language, our religion, and our culture during the penal laws. The Kennedys go back to around the 9th century. And of course, Brian Boru was Brian Kennedy, and he became High King of Ireland. He was the only High King of Ireland that had a united Ireland behind him. So we have a lot of culture attached to us, and nice to know that we have a bit of blue blood flowing through us all. I wish to thank my fellow officers, our Rooney, Phyllis, and all our committees for their dedicated work. Shinnin made it all our gum, Scomermi Guler, Bior, and Naum Shaharish, and we hope to see you all in 2021 at the next gathering. Sinead.
Hi everybody, I'm Congressman Joe Kennedy. I'm coming at you from a bright and sunny Massachusetts, where I'm in the final stretch of my campaign for U.S. Senate. Obviously, there is nowhere I'd rather be than with all of you right now, but I'm glad to have a chance to let you know that I'm thinking of you as you gather today. There are a few universal truths about the Irish. One is that we know how to celebrate, and the other is that we are resourceful. So even in the midst of a global health pandemic, I have no doubt that you're combining those strengths for a memorable reunion party. But there's something else that we're known for too, that's just as important right now. We are kind, we are resilient, and we are welcoming. As the world rallies together to defeat this pandemic, we need to be kind, resilient, and welcoming. We need to help our global neighbors who are struggling. We need to reject any efforts to divide and stigmatize. And we need to remember the lessons that we have learned from our ancestors. Gatherings like this one will help us do just that. Thanks so much. Enjoy the day. Slashdown.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Kennedy. Tom Kennedy from Tumbercan, or Tom Kennedy from Borrisacane. They're both more or less the same places, just to differentiate me from other members of the same name. I have prepared a small PowerPoint presentation just to illustrate the history of the IKHG, our present work, and some of the Kennedy landmarks around me where I live here in Borrisacane. I'm hoping there won't be too many technical glitches as I am just engaging the PowerPoint presentation for you. Now, so for the Kennedy Virtual Clan Gathering of 2020, I just want to put in context where we have come from and indeed where we hope to go to. So on this slide, you will see that in 2011, Brian Kennedy from the Gold Coast organised the first annual clan gathering in Chief Rody's Lounge in Rare Cross. 2014, Rody himself was inaugurated as Chief of the Kennedy clan, and Brian Patrick as Seanchai. For the non-Irish among us, Seanchai is the old word, I suppose, for a storyteller, the person who recorded orally the great deeds of the chiefs and warriors of past times. Then in 2015, the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group was formally established. And in that same year, the first tour was organised around Kennedy castles, Kennedy graveyards, and some Kennedy homesteads in the North Tipperary area. The photograph that I have here is an early photograph of the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group Committee. Starting at the front there on the left is myself, Tom Kennedy. In the centre is Donnchadh, who you've just been listening to. Donnchadh lives down near Cashel in County Tipperary, steeped in Irish music, Irish heritage and Irish folklore. And indeed, he hosts his own music programme on a local radio station. On the right at the front is Phyllis Kennedy. Phyllis has been from the beginning our very active and efficient secretary. And she's also put a huge amount of work and time and energy into curating the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group display at the Nenagh Heritage Centre here in County Tipperary. You'll hear more from Phyllis and her display later on in this presentation. And the back row, starting from the left, we have a man called Tim Lee. Then beside him, the next two people are the husband and wife of Mary and Mattie Ryan, known locally as Mattie Lar. Mattie has three of his grandparents are all Kennedys, and the amount of history that Mattie has in his brain is unbelievable. The gentleman with the glasses is Pat Kennedy. Pat is the husband of Phyllis. They live near Timivara in County Tipperary and are among a present batch of Kennedy landowners, not to the same extent as back in the 14 and 1500s, I'm afraid. Michael Kennedy in the middle there was our first chairman. Michael has stood down as chairman since to devote his time to farming activities and farming organisations. And as I mentioned earlier, he has been succeeded by Donnchadh. The tall gentleman is another Tom Kennedy. So to differentiate this Tom Kennedy, Tom lives in a place called Dirk, Palace Green, County Limerick, and a very, very active member of the IKHG. And finally, last but not least, the man you've already met, Chief Rody Kennedy. So what is our role? We see our role at present as continuing the work begun by Brian, the work of researching, preserving and disseminating the history of the Irish Kennedys. We have a number of vehicles for doing this. Firstly, the Irish Kennedy display in Nenagh Heritage Centre, more later on. Regular newsletters compiled and sent by me to the Irish KHG members on a fairly regular basis. We also have an Irish Kennedy website, www.irishkennedyheritagegroup.com, and that's based and administered here by myself from Ireland. And then I know Sean Kennedy in Australia administers the Irish Kennedy Facebook page on Facebook. The newsletters are sent out maybe 6 or 7 per year. I try to include little snippets of Irish history, little snippets of Kennedy family history, always looking for old photographs, old stories, as indeed is Phyllis for her display in the Heritage Centre. And when new members join, I usually try to highlight a section of their family history in the hope that it might just tick some bells or for existing members, because that's a very important part of our journey to connect Kennedys worldwide. So up to the present day, and as I speak to you today, the IKHG has 118 members. And to give you an idea of our spread, 56 of those members are resident in Ireland, 34 in Australia, and 21 in the United States of America. We also have members from the UK, from mainland Europe, from New Zealand and Canada. So I think we can truthfully say that our membership stretches all the way from the South Island of New Zealand to Alaska and the city of Anchorage, lying within the Arctic Circle. We're very much a voluntary group. None of us are historians or any kind of professionals in any way. We all work for the interest of the Kennedys. We charge a membership fee of €20 annually. We don't have very high expenses, but at the same time, there are ongoing expenses that we have to pay each year. And we organize membership mainly payable through PayPal, and it can be done to tom.irishkennedyheritagegroup@gmail.com. Now, I mentioned earlier that I live in Tombricane, Borrisicane, and I am pretty much surrounded by castles or tower houses that were either built or possessed by the O'Kennedys in the 14th, 15th and 16th centuries. As the chief landowners in the baronies of Upper and Lower Ormond at that time, the Kennedys built these castles or tower houses to consolidate control of their territory. And surrounding me here in Tombricane, Borrisicane, are the remains of approximately 20 Kennedy castles in various states of ruin or various states of disrepair, but they can still be seen to this day. And they've all been catalogued by Brian in his various books that he has published. The possession of these castles largely ended with the Cromwellian plantation of the 1650s or 1660s, with the famous edict from Oliver Cromwell, go to hell or to Connacht. If I leave my house here and walk just a mile in one direction, I will come to the ruins of Ballyfinby Castle. And I just feature this basically because it's so close to my own house. You can see there that one wall has collapsed. That wall collapsed in 2015 when we had a huge storm here. But by collapsing, it exposed the absolutely brilliant stonework of the O'Kennedys as they built their castles in the 1500s mainly. And you can see how that stonework is exposed there. We know from our records that Philip Kennedy of Ballyfinby Castle was transplanted to Connacht in the year 1657. Also in Ballyfinby, I just want to show you this one. This is taken from the side wall of Ballyfinby Castle, and it features a Sheila Negig. Now, Sheila Negig is a carved stone, usually depicting a nude female figure. And they're quite rare. It's quite difficult to find. There aren't too many Sheila Negigs still in their original places in Ireland today. But here we have one, just as I say, in Ballyfinby, just a half a mile from Borrisicane. The Sheila Negig itself is kind of a legacy of pagan times, we believe, and it is said to be a symbol of fertility. So quite an unusual thing. There's also one to be found in Ballinaclough graveyard, which is a graveyard of the O'Kennedys also. If I walk a mile the other side of my house, I will come to Tombricane Castle. As you can see, pretty much in disrepair and just included really because it's so local to me and so on. If I widen out the radius a little bit, I suppose, from where I am, within a 10-mile radius, I could come to the ruins or remains of castles at Dromina, Ballyhock, Ballingarry, Drumnahan, Anna, Toulon, Nye, where JFK's ancestors came from, Ballycapel, Drumineer, Ballycolleton, and Lackeen. And slightly further afield then in Upper Ormond, we'd find the castles of Cloughanan, Killarney, and Ballintatty, plus the Kennedy Fort at Thurles. Cloughanan Castle illustrates quite vividly the history of the castles, because it is no longer known as Cloughanan Castle. It is now called Castle Otway, because of course the Kennedys were dispossessed from Cloughanan in the 1650s. The castle and all the land surrounding it were instead granted to a captain in Cromwell's army, Captain Otway. So now, since the late 1600s, that castle has become known as Castle Otway. I also want to show you this one. This is Toulon Castle, also known as Lisquilibeen. And I'm showing you this one because this has been lovingly renovated and restored to its original splendor. by its present owners. It has been a decades-long work of labour, and they are now resident in this castle, and I think perhaps as well you might be able to rent it for your wedding or for a big celebration if you wanted to live in a castle for a week or two. Finally, I will come to the real jewel in the crown, I think, of Kennedy Castles. And this is the last one I'm going to speak on today. This is Lackeen Castle. Lackeen is the best preserved of all the Kennedy castles, really. The Kennedys were in Lackeen from 1336 to 1776. We think that this particular structure was probably built sometime in the 1500s. Donnchadh Kennedy of Lackeen was transplanted to Connacht in 1655. But amazingly, an inscription that was only recently discovered, kind of on the plaster on one of the inner walls, proves that Donnchadh had returned in some guise, we're not sure, but he was back in Lackeen, possibly secretly and furtively, in 1657. It's well preserved castle. A spiral stone staircase will still allow us to go up to the very top of the castle. I know one of our visitors last year, Bill Kennedy of California, has been very, very much taken by the castle. It's at present it's a historic monument basically, and it's guarded or supervised by the Office of Public Works here in Ireland. The last recorded Kennedy in Lackeen Castle was a John Kennedy in 1776. Of very historical importance, also from Lackeen Castle, I'm featuring here a page from what is called the Stowe Missal or the Laura Missal. This missal was discovered hidden deep in the thick walls of Lackeen in the mid-1700s. And because of conditions at the time, it ended up in a collection of the Duke of Buckingham in the UK, who resided at a place called Stowe House in Buckinghamshire, and hence it became known as the Stowe Missal. It is written in Latin and also in Old Gaelic, Old Irish. Historians believe that it was written in the nearby Laura Monastery sometime around the year 792 AD. So when you come to Lackeen and you climb those spiral staircases and you look inside the walls of the existing castle, you really are walking back in the footsteps of history. Thankfully, the Stowe Missal, or to give it, I think its more proper name, the Laura Missal, is now back in the National Museum of Ireland in Dublin. So if you're of Kennedy blood and you want to walk in the proud footsteps of your ancestors, then a visit to North Tipperary will enable you to enjoy a privilege available to very few people. Myself or other members of the Irish Kennedys will be only too glad to guide you around. As Donnchadh said earlier, go merimid bio eranam shoharish, or the English version in these times of strange trouble and pandemics, may we all be still alive this time next year. Go raibh míle maith agaibh and enjoy the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Hello, Mary Kennedy here, and I just want to wish Chief Rody and everybody at the virtual Kennedy gathering all the best. Bunaidh Panavos.
Hello to all at the Kennedy virtual gathering and to Chief Rody. I hope you enjoy and have a lovely time and learn loads from the Kennedy homestead here in Donnchadh near Ross, and keep safe. Take care.
Hello to all my Kennedy cousins. My name is Tom Ryan. I'm from Newport, Tipperary. I hope you have a great day in Rarecross. My great-great-grandmother was Bridget Kennedy from Garabang, and she was married to Owen Ryan from Ogabahar, Killiscully.
Hello, Kennedys. My name is Tricia Nowak. I'm from Eureka, Illinois, and my Kennedy is Patrick Kennedy, my great-grandfather, born in Tipperary, allegedly in 1837. And I have quite a few of my cousins and my brother, all D.N.A. out there. I think his mother's name was Mary Guinan, not sure of his father's name. Wish I could be there with you all.
Well, Claudia, we're going to continue with a little bit of music this time. And it's Irish, a selection of hornpipes that we're going to have. The first hornpipe is called the Galway hornpipe. And the second hornpipe is called Off to California. Our musicians are Tommy Kennedy, who hails from Enniscorthy. His grandfather came from Carnew into Enniscorthy and set up family there. Tommy himself has been living in Tipperary for over 40 years, Tipperary town, and Tommy plays an accordion. With him, we have his very good friend, Billy Clifford, and Billy also hails from all over the world, you could say, because Billy was born in London, but reared in Niamh Gilla in County Kerry, and has lived the best part of nearly 50 years in Tipperary town. So there's a huge attraction to Tipperary town for people moving in. But Billy comes from a very talented family. His father and mother were both musicians. Even his uncle Dennis Murphy down in Kerry, also the late Dennis Murphy. So they're going to play the two hornpipes for us. The first one again is the Galway, and the second tune is Off to California. So away with the music.
My name's Marc Kennedy, and I'm in Australia at the moment. My connection goes back to Caravan, as Tom Ryan, who gave us a greeting a few minutes, mentioned. And I'm just going to talk about our D.N.A. Kennedy's in Tipperary and Limerick, and a little bit about the family tree research that we're doing. As Tom said, to try to link together Kennedys from Tipperary, wherever they are in the world. It's just a photo from Caravan at the moment. Our connections go back to at least 1815. So while D.N.A. tools are increasingly being used to help connect up long lost families, traditional genealogical research really underpins everything else we do. So we still use birth, death, marriage, and census records, family records, and whatever other tools we can access. But the D.N.A. tools sometimes allow us to go back one or two generations prior to the available Irish records, knowing, of course, that a lot of records were lost in 1922 during the Civil War. Autosomal DNA, which is the DNA on all of the chromosomes in the body except for the sex chromosomes, is what we use mainly. And there's a number of different companies that do those tests. And every few months they have sales where they're much cheaper to do them. The main ones are Ancestry.com, Family Tree DNA, MyHeritage, 23andMe, and Living DNA. Most of them allow you to take the results done on a test on one of the sites and download the information and upload it onto one of the other sites. The reason that that's useful is because people test on different sites. You may have close relatives that help you to piece together your tree that have tested with one of the other companies. So if you're able to upload your information onto all the different sites, then you maximise the chance of being able to discover extra connections. The one exception to that is Ancestry.com, that really won't allow any other tests from any other site to be uploaded to theirs. So that's challenging. And on top of that, there's a set of analysis tools, an organisation called GEDmatch, which I'll talk about in a moment, that don't sell DNA testing, but that provide a service where you can upload results from any of the other companies and then do a lot of extra analysis. And that's what Tom and I spend a fair bit of time doing. About that in a minute too. GEDmatch.com, taken over last year by another company called Verigen, and they provide all these applications for comparing DNA results. Some of those are free. Some of the more advanced things require an annual or a monthly subscription, but there's a lot that can be done just with the free applications. And you have to register. Whether you register for the free or for the paid service, you still have to register. That's the contact details. And a little over 12 months ago, GEDmatch contacted people who were looking after a lot of DNA projects and invited them to create ancestry projects. And we were, I think, the 11th or 12th project, and now there's many hundreds. And we set this up originally to look for descendants of Long Andrew Kennedy, but we've now expanded it to include people with Kennedy ancestors in the towns near the border of Limerick and Tipperary, and also those with significant DNA matches to those that are already in the group. As of 2 hours ago, we already had 464 members, and we've got a master family tree, most of the entries that are verified, and with over 16,000 people now. So we're able to connect up an increasing number of trees. Tom Ryan, who you heard from earlier, and I are joint administrators, and Tom has also set up a Facebook page so that once people apply to join the project and upload their DNA to GEDmatch, then they can join the Facebook group, and there's lots of discussions where people help each other to work out their connections. That's just the Facebook page. There's a lot of tools that we can use, and Tom's a master at them. One of the things that we can do is use a set of clustering tools where people who have uploaded their information are able to see who they share certain segments of DNA together with, and in that way work out relationship paths. So you might match many thousands of people, but by looking at people who you share the same amount of DNA with, or the same segment of DNA, you're able to work out which particular line in your family tree is likely to be the connecting line. And it's very helpful in establishing new connections with people that might be 3 or 4 generations back to a common ancestor. Triangulation, is an advance on that, where there's a specific segment that's shared by a number of people, and the GEDmatch offers tools that allow us to do those sort of analysis. And when people join our project, we help them to work out their clustering and triangulation. We get graphs like this where we have all a list of people that share DNA down the left-hand side of the graph paper, and then along the top of the graph paper, and the clustering tools put people together based on shared segments so that we can identify likely common ancestors. And in this particular group, and I've removed all of the identifying details, you can see there's a whole lot of different common ancestors that are worth then chasing up. And the darker the colour, the stronger the amount of DNA that's shared is. Ancestry.com is, although it doesn't play well with all of the other testers, it's got some additional things that have been released in the last 12 months, which can be very helpful as well. And one of them is called Through Lines. The spelling is Ancestry spelling, not mine. But that shows identified descendants of a likely similar ancestor. And Tom and I often find that a way of linking back to ancestors that go back 1 or 2 generations, perhaps before any records that are still available to us. There's usually a lot of work to be done to try to determine whether that's possible or not, whether it's a certain connection or not. And for example, this is one that I just printed up and removed the identifying information, but Long Andrew Kennedy, who is a connection for many of us. He's my great-great-great-great-grandfather, so back in the 1700s. But Through Lines has identified just on Ancestry DNA a whole lot of potential descendants going back through what they've identified as 6 probable children, one of whom, Matthew Kennedy, is not one that we've been able to verify in any other documents yet. So we're still working on that. But you can see Philip Kennedy, the one that Tom and I come to, and many of the people in this gathering. There's 39 DNA matches just through that particular line. But so there's more and more tools becoming available all the time that allow us to push things back beyond where the records allow us to find connections in baptisms and civil records. There are other things that allow us to, when we get lists of all the people that we share DNA with print up lists of those people that we share. If you share DNA with a particular one particular person, you can then look for other people that share DNA with that person, and often that gives you another clue as to which particular branch you might be sharing on. And all of the DNA testing companies provide that sort of facility. And just lastly, why D.N.A, which is following the paternal D.N.A line, is not something that really helps in the last 5 or 6 generations, because Y D.N.A is small in amount and changes very slowly. On average, only 1 mutation every 2nd generation. So most men share the same Y D.N.A with their father. But it allows us to go back tens of thousands of years in terms of the paternal line, and a lot of work's being done on that. We're not doing much of that ourselves, but the O'Briens, who come down from Brian Boru, have been doing an enormous amount of work on that, and they've confirmed that at least Long Andrew's line is descended directly from Brian Boru's brother, and the likely common ancestor is the father or grandfather of Brian Boru. And in time, when more and more of us get our Y D.N.A tested as well, we'll be able to work out where we branch off that line. But that's another avenue that's offering up more opportunities with each year. That's all really I wanted to say. I'd encourage anybody who wants to do a test, and then contact us, and we will help work out how you connect in with us. Hopefully you'll connect in somewhere into all of the 400 plus people we've already got in the group. And I just wanted to personally thank Chief Rody and the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group Committee and Dennis O'Malley for allowing the reunion to continue despite these COVID times. It's lovely that we can all connect together, especially those of us in Victoria and Kildare and Laos and Offaly who are back into lockdown. Thank you all.
Tom Kennedy, Derek Palace Green, County Limerick. I'm a member of the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group Committee, which is organising today's event. I wish to thank our Chief, Rody Kennedy, for the help and hospitality he has shown us at our meetings in Rare Cross. I also wish to thank our Seanchai, Brian Kennedy, for the immense help he is giving us in today's event. He has walked the highways and byways of Upper and Lower Ireland in his search for Kennedy homesteads and castles over the last 800 years.
Eve, this is Micheál O'Cinnéide, wishing the best for the clan gathering to all Muintir Cinnéide around the world, especially our Seanchai Brian and his family in Australia. We know you're going through a hard time in Australia these days, and to Chief Rody in the wilds of Tipperary. But the resilience of the O'Cinnéide will come through, as it had in the 17th century and the 19th century. Thank you.
Hello, Michael Ryan Kiss here, originally from Mean V in Hollyford. My great-grandmother was a Kennedy from File Dove, so I'm very happy to be associated with the Kennedy clan and their gatherings, and I wish in particular to congratulate Chief Rody Kennedy and Seanchai Brian Patrick Kennedy on a virtual 9th anniversary gathering. Strange times, but I suppose it's the way modern things are going anyway, that there'll be more virtual communication rather than actual communication. Again, my very best wishes to all of the Kennedys. Thank you.
I'm Mary Humphreys Ryan, and I'm sending greetings from Phyllis in County Tipperary to Chief Rody, his wife Anne and family, and all the Kennedy clan worldwide. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at the reunion in 2021 in Rare Cross, the Cúnamh Day. Stay safe, agus slán.
Well, Cordia, back again this time, and it's kind of a sad period for me in one sense, because the lady that I wanted to sing this song was alive up to the beginning of June, and that was the late Nora Butler. Nora as the Butlers are celebrating 800 years, the Kennedys would have been using some of the castles. There was integration there between Kennedys and Butlers in the residency there, particularly in Nenagh Castle. But Nora does a lovely rendering of a song called My Home Lies in Tipperary. And we'd like you to listen to it. And once again, to say that we're so sad that Nora has passed away. Off we go with Nora and My Home Lies in Tipperary.
My home lies in Tipperary, round the slopes of Slievenamon, where the lark and linnet sweetly sing at the dawning of the day. It's but a small mud cabin and its floors are made of clay. But my heart lies in that cabin, Tipperary, far away. By the side of our mud cabin, the river Anner flows, where the widow's brown-haired daughter taught young Kickham's heart to love, where rolling from the rafters took his pike to make the hay. Sing, rise up, my gallant Tipperary boys, Tipperary far away. When I think of Charles Kickham, no wonder do I moan, and dream of where his body lies in his native Mullinahone, where thousands of his countrymen they came to kneel and pray. In magnificent Tipperary, Tipperary far away. I remember 1930 when we won the Triple Crown. We sailed the briny ocean to play in the polo ground. We came back all world champions and was proud for to say we've all come from Tipperary, Tipperary far away. And soon we'll all be sailing home to the slopes round Slievenamon, where the men of old, the days of yore, could handle a pike and gun, where the maidens fair with their nut brown hair could sing and dance all day. In magnificent Tipperary, Tipperary far away.
Hello everyone, welcome once again to another talk by the Seanchai, or the historian and storyteller of the Irish Kennedys. I'm going to be talking about a few things today. First of all, a little bit about the history of the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group, and then about the Kennedy and Ryan books, and then about the Irish Kennedy family charts. On my 24th visit to Ireland in 2015, we convened a group at Chief Rody's pub, a group of very interested people, and we put together the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group. The reason for doing that was, until then, the Irish Kennedys were pretty well in contact with a lot of their relatives and friends in Ireland and in various other countries, but they had no body as such to organise and put together gatherings and that sort of thing. So you can see the video about how that was set up originally on the Irish Kennedys website, on the Irish Kennedys Facebook page. If you have a look at that, you will see the video of that very first meeting at which we set up the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group. The Irish Kennedy Heritage Group now meets on a very regular basis to preserve and to foster the history of the Irish Kennedys. Now, my research into the history of the Kennedys started much earlier than that. Sean and I went to Ireland for the first time from Australia in 1993. My son and I were very interested in the history of our own family, as many people are. So we decided that we would go to Ireland and have a look for ourselves. Sean had already been there for a week or two, and I had to go there on business, so he picked me up at the airport at Shannon, and on a wet, drizzly afternoon he drove me over to where our Kennedys had left a cottage in the mountains in Tipperary to go to Australia in 1863. Now, that visit to Ireland in 1993 was the culmination of a lot of research that I had first begun in 1970. That's 50 years ago. I started looking. My father had died. He'd always told us that we were descended from King Kennedy, and we wanted to have a look and find out whether that was true or not. Now, as a part of that process, I amassed over time a library of books. And one of the first ones I managed to get hold of in Ireland was a very interesting little book. And you can see it on there, The Last Lords of Ormond by Dr. Dermot F. Gleeson. This original little book I found from the stamp inside came from the priest's library at Castleknock College. Now, how it got from there to the bookseller in Dublin, who charged me $95 for it, I don't know. But I'm very glad that it did, because it gave me my first look at the written history of the Irish Kennedys. And we all know now Dr. Dermot Gleeson and his stories that he's told us, and believe me, I read and reread this book. Now, Dermot Gleeson told us that he wrote the book about the 17th century and the Kennedys in the 17th century, and the reason he did that was that to do anything further would be far too time consuming. I might add that, of course, he wrote it in 1938. He didn't have the internet. He didn't have any access like we have today to all sorts of online material. All he had was going to Dublin, to the libraries there, searching around in his spare time, and ending up with this wonderful little book. Now, that inspired me, the fact that Dr. Gleeson had spent so much time researching our Kennedys to tell us about ourselves. But it was only in the 17th century. So, having gathered a fair bit of information about that, and putting together my own family story and finding more material on the way through, in 1997 I came up with this little book, only a little one, The Irish Kennedys, a recorded history that goes back over 1,000 years to the time when the first Kennedy led his people from the front with sword and spear, and there you can see him leading from the front. So I wrote that, and a lot of people wanted copies of it, and then they kept on asking me question after question after question about their Kennedys and about other things and so on, and I realised that this little book was nowhere near sufficient to answer some of those questions. So in 2005 out came The Irish Kennedys, and this had much more information, much more detail. My library's expanded, I put together much more information, and there we are. The Irish Kennedys came out in 2005. This is a must-have book for all Irish Kennedys. It will take them right back through the history and tell them about all the amazing things that happened and about how the Kennedys managed to survive and prosper over a 1,000-year period. Now, to do that, my library expanded with many books, such as the Civil Survey of 1654, and you can see by all the tags on there all of the times I've looked that book up. And you can see also the Transplantation to Connaught by R.C. Symington. Wonderful book, full of history to tell us what Kennedys weren't able to escape the Cromwellian net and who got dragged to all sorts of places in Clare and in Galway and so on. So here I am in Ireland. I'm talking to all these Kennedys about all sorts of things, and they say, yes, but what about us? You haven't written about us. So the Mountainy Kennedys. The Mountainy Kennedys came out firstly to tell the story of the Kennedys who escaped Cromwell and escaped transplantation to Connaught and who went into the mountains. And our chief, Rody Kennedy, is a descendant of one of those people who went into the mountains to the Rear Cross area, as are my Kennedys, and as are many other Kennedys that I'm familiar with, whose people went into the mountains. So it tells the story of the various places in the mountains where they went, what they did, and how they managed to escape detection for a couple of 100 years. But as is always the case, I had people saying to me, yes, but what about us? So I had to write a second edition of the Mountainy Kennedys to talk about all of the people who went to various places. For example, Thomas Kennedy, Thomas Kennedy of Foyle Duff, who's one of my ancestors, and so on. So there we go, the Kennedys, Mountainy Kennedys Volume 2. During the process of writing all of this and doing some research, everybody was asking, well, what about John F. Kennedy, the late president? Is he related to us? And I thought, well, I better find out. So I went down to Dunganstown and I met Patrick Grennan down there. Patrick owns the property that President John F. Kennedy's ancestor left to go to America. And Patrick was trying to preserve as much of the history as he could, and he showed me around and talked to me, and he said, look, he said, we know nothing about the Kennedy side of the family. He said, we know about the others and about all the other relatives and ancestors that went to America, but we don't know anything much about the Kennedys. And he said, and when people come here, and I'm sure Patrick's listening at the moment, he said, when people come here, he said, I usually make some things up about President Kennedy. He said, because I don't know anything. He said, can you write a book about him for us? So I set out on a long process to investigate and research the history of President John F. Kennedy. So there we are, John F. Kennedy's Irish O'Kennedy Ancestors. And that came out 2012, and it tells the story, as far as I'm able to establish it, of where President John F. Kennedy's people came from and how they came, as I believe, from around Nenagh, just north of Nenagh, around Nye, in that area. And that's the story I tell here. I looked at all the different possibilities, and they were my conclusions, and that book is now on sale down at the Kennedy Homestead, which has been renovated and rebuilt and made into a magnificent structure for people who are interested in the late President John F. Kennedy. But that wasn't the end of my requests. Then I had people saying to me, well, you've written about all those Kennedys down in the mountains, but what about us out on the plains here in Upper Ormond? We've got a lot of Kennedys up here too that you haven't written about. So the next book was the Upper Ormond Kennedys, their claims to Tipperary soil. And they do have lots of claims to Tipperary soil in the Ormond deeds and so on, all the way through. You can see all sorts of claims that they have and where they were, and we've got examples, for example, here where we have a lot of gravestones of Kennedys in churches that we can trace back to places like Glasstrigan, and Tom Kennedy, well known in the Irish Kennedys Heritage Group. That's his people on those gravestones. But not only his people, there are plenty of others, plenty of other Kennedys. An interesting thing in that church, only Kennedys were allowed to be buried inside the ruin of the church. If anybody else tried to bury any of their deceased inside the ruin, they were told to get them out. Of course, when the Lower Ormond Kennedys heard about the Upper Ormond Kennedys being written about, they said, well, what about us? You haven't written about us yet. So I spent a lot of time researching the histories of the Lower Ormond Kennedys to the north of Nenagh, up in Lower Ormond. Plenty of Kennedy castles up there, plenty of inscriptions on headstones, plenty of wonderful occasions I had up there, especially with Tom Kennedy from the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group, who put days and days aside in the cold winter January to take me around and show me what he knew of all of these places. So putting that together with the books I had on the history, I found things like, in the background on this cover, you'll see a headstone. And it's the headstone that I wasn't meant to find. But I found that going to Ireland so many times and going around so much of the Kennedy history that now I didn't believe in supernatural things and so on. Now I do. I went with Tom Kennedy to a remote church ruin, and we looked around for Kennedy graves in the graveyard, and we couldn't find much. And we walked out back to the car, and we got in the car, and I said to Tom, wait. He said, what? And I said, wait, I've got to go back in. And he said, what for? He said, well, we've got to go to somewhere else. And I said, well, what? Just hang on a minute. And I walked back into the graveyard to a bit of ruined wall. I don't know why, But I went over to the corner of that wall and I pulled aside some of the foliage and vines that were growing down, and I found the headstone dedicated to Lord Brian O'Kennedy in 1705. So it just goes to show, when you are walking around the place and looking around, just take time to let the ambience and the bystanders' enjoyment seep over you, and things will come to you, and you'll find some things. And that's happened to me quite a few times in Ireland. So I tell that story in the Lower Ormond Kennedys, how that came about. And then, of course, the Kennedys and the Ryans, as we know, are inextricable. Kennedys and Ryans are so close together that they can't be separated. And of course, as I'm on my 30 visits to Ireland at various times, I run into people called Ryan, and I find relatives named Ryan, and they ask us about their Ryans. And when are you going to write a book about our Ryans? And I say, sorry, the Ryans will have to write a book about themselves, because I haven't got enough time to write about them. Anyway, the Ryans are very persistent people. They've been around for a long, long time, and they know how to get their way. And I'm sure some of the Ryans listening at the moment will know that. Anyway, I bowed to the pressure of the Ryans, and the first book on the Ryans of Tipperary and Limerick, came out. And there, in the book, is as much as I can put together about the history of the Ryans of Tipperary and Limerick. And what a history it is. What a history it is. Just as well they were friendly with the Kennedys, otherwise the two lots of families would have probably come to blows and wiped each other out. But fortunately, they got together and intermarried and became solid friends for many centuries. But then I had other Kennedys in touch with me from all over Ireland saying, what about us? You haven't written about us yet. We're from wherever. We're from Galway, or we're from Cork, or we're from Clare, or we're from... And I found that they were in every county in the Irish Republic. So here we have the dispersal of the Irish Kennedys across the Irish Republic from North Tipperary. Now, there are many, many Kennedys outside of Tipperary, and I found them in all sorts of places. I found them in remote areas. I found them in the mountains. I found them down on the seaside, down in County Galway, and in Cork, and across in Waterford, and also not to forget. I also had requests from the Kennedys to the east of Ormond. There are a lot of Kennedys moved across the hills towards the other counties of Kilkenny and so on, and also to the other civil parishes and places towards the east. So they were all recorded in the Kennedys who moved eastward to baronies adjacent to Ormond, into Cairn and Eliogatty and Kilnamanagh and Gelmoy and so on. So you'll find them all there. But the Ryans were persistent. They kept at me. They said, well, you've written about those Ryans over there, over on the western side of Tipperary, but what about us over here? We're from the home of the Ryans. So here we have the Ryans of Tipperary and Kilkenny, and that's got the story of many, many families of Ryans back in their original places. Now that's a lot of books, and we're still writing them. The next one I'm working on is not yet able to be finished because it deals with the resilience of the Irish Kennedys. And the resilience of the Irish Kennedys is being tested very, very much at the moment with what's going on, not just in Ireland, but all over the world. So that book, The Resilience of the Irish Kennedys, still has a little time to go. But if you wish to have a look at what's available for the Irish Kennedy books, you can have a look at this particular website under Weebly, irishkennedys at weebly.com, and you'll find descriptions of all the books that I've been presenting today contained on that website. So if you're interested in Kennedy books, have a look at irishkennedys.weebly.com. Now I'd like to talk about Kennedy family charts. You'll see in the background a chart which is my own family chart, which has 33 generations of Kennedys, going from the first Kennedy and his father Lorcan down all those 33 generations to my grandchildren. And if I just bring this chart across, and show you the things that can be done today in putting together an individual family history. And not only have I completed this chart for my own family, but I have completed it for others. For example, here across the bottom you will see the various houses that I've identified over a number of years, over a number of centuries, in which my Kennedys lived. For example, we have Turin Bryan and Foyle Duff, and then Foyle Clara, and then Brisbane, where my great-grandparents came, my grandfather's house, my father's house, and my own house, and then pictures of those people across here. And above them, all of the Kennedy castles that are still in existence and able to have pictures taken. And then going back from all of those, all of the families of the Kennedys, of the Irish Kennedys, going all the way back to the top. Now, I have done a number of those for various people who were able to provide me with the information to put them together. Now, it's not based on imagination, it's based on family knowledge, historical fact, family records, and what I'm usually able to do with a chart like this is to go back from an existing family and then go back and find the linkage back around 1700 with the rest of the Kennedy family tree to make the link back all the way back through. Now, if you're interested in that, you can contact me via the Irish Kennedys Facebook page, and we can see if you have sufficient evidence to be able to link your family back to the Kennedys. Well, that's all for now. As the Seanchai, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to pass all of this information and knowledge on. I've been working on it, as you know, as I've told you, for many, many years, and I intend to continue doing that for as long as I'm capable. So thank you very much, and all the best.
We recently visited Nenagh Heritage Centre to view the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group's display. The entrance to the Heritage Centre is located across the road from Nenagh Castle. situated in a set of buildings of historic importance which formed the old Nenagh jail. I met with Phyllis Kennedy and her husband Pat Kennedy. Phyllis is curator of the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group. Hi folks,
Hello,
hi
Dennis.
Phyllis,
How are you,
hi
Dennis?
Pat.
You're very
I've
welcome.
come to see your lovely Kennedy display. Phyllis and Pat brought me on a tour of the display, which included the first step of signing the visitor's book. The display is fantastic and well worth a visit when you visit the Kennedy homelands of Lower Ormond, that is, North Tipperary.
Welcome to the Kennedy display at the Old Governor's Jail in Nenagh. Not as serious as it sounds. We're here in the historic quarter of Nenagh, the castle, the noble castle, a Butler castle built 1200 to 1220 to keep his old remains, but it's colossal. There are two churches nearby, Catholic and Church of Ireland, courthouse, really a historic area. There were 7 jail blocks radiating from this building. We are in the chapel where we stand. The gatehouse, very impressive walking in. This is where the executions took place. Quite a few, I believe. It was closed, the jail was closed in 1886, I think. All the county jails were. We're in the following will be a look at the Kennedy display here. I will welcome everybody and wish you all.
Hello, welcome all Kennedys and friends. I'm Phyllis Ryan Kennedy, Secretary of the Irish Kennedy Heritage Group, and I also take care of the Kennedy display at Nenagh Heritage Centre. It started in 2016 with just a few charts. Since then, numerous Kennedys have donated family charts and photographs, and I want to take this opportunity to thank them. I also want to thank Nora and staff at the Heritage Centre. They were always so helpful. Now that we have a lovely display, much admired by other clans, especially the Ryans, I intend to keep it that way. Thank you. Our chairmans, Donnchadh Kennedy's, and our treasurers, Marc Kennedy's relations as well. They're from Cooga, Cappamore. This is my husband's grandfather, Dan Kennedy, Lismore to Mivara. This is Robert Kennedy and his brother John F. Kennedy, President. This is our Chief Rody Kennedy of Rail Cross. John Kennedy meeting John F. Kennedy, his namesake as well, from Connecticut. This is Jeremiah Kennedy, born in 1848 at Lismore to Mivara. His parents emigrated in 1852 with 7 siblings of Jeremiah. This is a Kennedy ancestor chart. This is Hugh Kennedy, Senior Counsel, First Attorney General of the Irish Free State. This is Kennedys of Garavan. More Kennedys of Garavan. More Kennedys of Caravan donated by Marc Kennedy, Australia, and also Dennis and Maureen Kennedy O'Malley. This is the homestead of Marc of the Kennedys of Caravan. This is Martin Kennedy, the hurler, Tipperary hurler. This is Nenagh Castle, approximately 1800. It's a painting actually. And this is our gathering in 2018 to the Kennedy homestead in Donnchadh. This is the almond deeds of 13th or 14th century.
Phyllis has done a great job in curating the display, which includes the almond deeds showing Kennedy land ownership over the centuries, and family trees and many, many photographs.
The poem I'm going to read for you today is called The Men Who Roamed the Glen, and it was written in 1984 by Michael Tracy, now deceased, to commemorate the centenary of the founding of Common Lúthchleas Gael, otherwise known as the Gaelic Athletic Association, or the GAA. There are one or two Irish terms thrown in, which I'll explain as I go along. The Men Who Roamed the Glen. Centenary year has come at last, as I look back with pride to where I spent my boyhood days round Glengar and Comnaline. I can see them still, those hurling men, cross bogs from near and far to loosen up their muscles on the slopes of famed Glengar. A fading memory takes me back to 1939, the return of Paddy Slattery from New York to Comnaline. They called him Yank when he arrived. He was their very own. No time he lost on his return Glengar's pride to restore. Far from TVs they were reared back in the early 40s, videos, transistors, telephones, motorcars and carpets. To copy from the stranger none of them would ever dare. They were truly dedicated to Common Lúthchleas Gael. Nobody ever interfered with their simple way of life. They ate salmon when the floods came and played cards by candlelight. If they didn't have the price of drink, the truth to you I tell, they were happy going on their knees to drink from Crossisle's well. Most of them knew from Jack and Hugh how to make the best poteen. You could meet them any hour of night on field or quiet boreen, complete with yeast and sugar, tin cans and bags of turf. They were experts at the job and examined it drop by drop. Ned Dannher owned the local shop, well stocked with pens and jotters, pig rings, fongs and cenopods, with other things that mattered. The times were tough and things were scarce, sometimes no cigarettes. They made their own with Gary Owen wrapped in the daily press. Ah, there were men in the Glen that time the Yank won gold at handball. Tom Tracy and Mick Buckley castrated pigs and horses. Ned Kennedy was on Shanachie, the historian. Michael Shanahan, a noted runner, while William Early down the road fixed all their clocks and watches. There are many long since left the Glen would love again the chance to hear Tom Quinlan play the box and watch Jack Slattery dance. The beauty of Foyle Darragh and Nochannavar to see, and watch the men from the mountainside going to the creamery. Before the hurling matches all the boys were well prepared. The hurleys and the jerseys were in Paddy Slattery's care. I travelled to matches with him and can well describe a trip. The pony dare not make a move until his pipe was lit. We moved nice and slow by Foiling a Crow and on to the old school cross. He had kept a vacant seat that day. It was covered with a sack. We worried when it was getting late. We should have started sooner. But Yank maintained the day was long. He would have to wait for Cooney. When Denny came, we were on our way and had no other call. They argued a while about the time as the Yank laid down the law. From there on they talked of hurling, the present and the past.
Turf or hay had no role to play, it was all about the match. As we jogged along through Capelwhite and on to famed Dundrum, the hurlers on their bikes came on and passed us one by one. Liam Kennedy, Sonny and Paddy Hayes, Small Con and Billy Bryan, Johnny Pat and Christy Buckley, Denny and Neddy Ryan. Sonny Bryan, Bill Early, Tommy Fitz are in my memory still. Bill Connors, DJ Tracy and the Slatterys, Tom and Jim. I could see the smile on Cooney's face as Dan Dunn passed with bag, Matty Kennedy and Pat Duggan with Lal who smoked a fag. On the day they had two nobody knew, the men from God knows where. Jack Mulcahy and Paddy Kramer, we never mentioned names. Told in advance they would take a chance, it could have a sorry ending. Surely Mia Murray, Bill Hayes and their ilk would have Glengar suspended. We had nicknames on them too, Cornally, the Tailor, the Grey, the Tur and Paddy Sweeper Ryan who went to the USA. The names keep ringing in my ears like Johnny Corbett's fiddle. Scanlon we called Mick Connors then, and Jack Tracy was the Tiddles. As we reached Dundrum, the crowds had come. The first salute we got, "Is there any chance you would be on time a morning of a match?" "I'm here an hour," Mick Connors said, "and all the boys are waiting. Throw me the hurleys and jerseys quick. Did you bring the embrocation?" As they loosened up in Lycett's yard, all ready for the game, the wise old owls among them crept, the Yank and Long Mackays. They were trained to last the pace okay on the day they should come good. And to tell you just how good they were, Jack Butler was a sub. Sonny Hayes got his instructions. I heard Rody Ryan explaining. "Keep the forwards off the hopping ball and let it into Taylor." Mick Connors was always last to speak. The ritual never altered. "It's up to you now, lads. Bless yourself," and he sprinkled the holy water. On the field they always gave their best and played it tough and clean. If in doubt, ask the men from Donnchadh, Cashel or Rose Green. They thrilled spectators in Dundrum and pitches all around. I could count on the number of teeth I have the times they let us down. God rest the souls of those who have gone unto their last reward. Lord, in your great mercy, don't judge the boys too hard. Give them a place with hills and slopes, mountain ash and leather. They asked for little else on earth, only you have something better. Today, while having a cup of tea, some letters dropped in the hallway. The first one said I owed him money. My friend on Kigaracanock, the tax inspector. The next one was all written in red, said, "Pay by return, please." When I thought of the men who roamed the glen, I cursed the ESB, the Electricity Supply Board. Maybe history will repeat itself, as somebody one time said. I would like to see Glengar revived before I play on the red. It would be a joke to call me a poet. I'm only a bogman still, and I like to think of how things were when I spread the turf for Bill. When I see some advertising done to attract the tourist here, I cannot really understand why Glengar does not appear. To me it has no equal with its hills, glens, firs and ferns. May I ask you, in this day and age, will Bord Fáilte ever learn? That's the Irish Tourist Board. For those of you who don't know Glengar, name a day and take a drive. Get some of the natives there to act for you as guide. They will show you where the banshee cried, where we had our little still, where Cathy Rue capsized the van, where Mick Coleman kept a king. They will tell you many stories while you take the mountain air, like the one about Dave Fitzgerald when he fired at a big brown hare. The hare stood on his two hind legs, stripped his teeth and snarled. "You nearly got me, Dave," he said. "Why did you do it, Fitzgerald?" They'll show you the green field by the river, the Rapparee's training range, where Ned of the Hill did roam at will and loved the wild terrain, where Sarsfield and O'Hogan camped and didn't need a disguise. They never bred an informer yet on that lovely mountain side. You'll hear all about the roads before Mick Buckley got them tarred. The ditch myself and Dave Fitz jumped when faced with a motor car. Alas, you'll see the old hurling pitch, now part of history. I'm finished my poem, my mug of tea, agus is anam them, M.O.T. Micheál Ó Trasig is my name. My connection with the Kennedy starts with my grandparents, Paddy and Margaret Kennedy, pictured here on their wedding day. This is one of a set of cards that my aunt, Sister Immaculata Kennedy, sent to us in the 60s. She was very proud of her Irish Kennedy name and that she shared it with the President. My husband Pat and I at the homecoming event in New Ross in 2013. Kit Kennedy, wife of Ted Kennedy Jr., mingling with the crowds. My daughter Emer, Pat and I pictured with Chris and Riley Kennedy. My daughter Emer with Max and Chris. 3 generations of the Kennedys in front of the Rody famine ship. Proud moment, I'm sure, for Caroline Kennedy. JFK's grandson addressing the gathering. Going up to the Eternal Flame Monument. And there was a flyover at the end of the events. My 4th cousin, Brian Patrick Kennedy, tracing in my kitchen. This photograph was taken in 2016 at the Kennedy Castle's trip. It was taken at Toulon Castle, and the lady in the front with the light blue shirt is restoring the castle at the moment. Ballycapel Castle is our Kennedy family home. Yours truly at the back of the castle. Ballycapel Castle is now being supported by a dairy. Left to right, Patrick Grennan from Dunganstown, County Wexford, a cousin of the Kennedy family of Massachusetts. Brian Patrick Kennedy from Australia, and the late Tom Cleary from Ballycapel, who made us very welcome on that day. 3 cousins at Ballycapel Castle doorway. Patrick Grennan and Tom Kennedy cousins on the roof of Ballycapel. Kennedy hands? Patrick Grennan and Lawrence Kennedy from London. Mary Kennedy with the 2 Patricks in Chief Rody Kennedy's pub in Rear Cross. Chief Rody with Lawrence and Brian in the background.
Hello Kennedys, I just want to wish you all the best, and sorry I couldn't be there to take part in your virtual get together. So I want to say particular shout out to Chief Rody and all the Kennedys. I hope you have a great day and enjoy this virtual get together, and well done to Dennis for organising this. Okay, take it easy. Cheers lads.
Hi, I'm Nora from County Wexford, daughter of Eilish Kennedy from Garvan. Best wishes to Chief Rody from all the Wexford Kennedys.
This is Maureen Kennedy O'Malley, Maru, County Limerick, daughter of Pat Kennedy of Garvan. Best wishes to Chieftain Rody and his wife Anne and all the members of the Kennedy at home and away, and a special wish to our dear friends in Geelong. Keep safe, Slán.
Hi all Kennedys, my name is Matt Ryan from Nenagh, County Tipperary. I'm originally a Ryan Luke from Garvan, Rare Cross, County Limerick, better known in those parts of the world as Matty Luke. My mother was Sis Carey from Phyllis, Doon, County Limerick. And my Kennedy genes come from her mother, my grandmother Lizzie Kennedy. My genealogy of the Kennedys has developed as a result of my dealing with my 3rd cousin Brian Kennedy from Brisbane. He will tell you all about the connections. We should all be eternally grateful to Brian for what he has done in putting us all together and keeping us together. Could I wish our Chief, Rody Kennedy from Rare Cross, all the best. No doubt, like all our former chiefs in the face of crisis, he will guide us successfully through this crisis, the coronavirus crisis. Best wishes to all. Keep safe. Bye-bye.
Hello, Alice Flynn here, formerly Alice Kennedy of Garavan Red Cross. Wishing Rody and all the Irish Kennedys the best of luck with their virtual gathering. Gonairi and Tholive.
Fáilte roimh go léir go dtí an cruinniú clowní Canada. Is Misha Marc Canada an Kistor. Welcome everybody to the Kennedy Clan Gathering. My name is Marc O'Canada and I am the treasurer. The performance you're about to see is of Irish set dancing. The performers are my brothers Patrick and Alan and my sisters Caroline and Maria. They are former All-Ireland champions in this form of dancing. They are performing a half set which consists of 4 participants, and this performance was performed in the Strand Hotel in Limerick City. We hope you enjoy it.
Hi everyone, Marie Ryan here, daughter of Maureen Kennedy and Garavan. Just want to wish everyone the best luck with the virtual rally for the Kennedys. I hope everyone is keeping safe and talk to you all soon. Bye.
Hello, Chief Rody and all the members of the Kennedy clan on what is the occasion of the 9th annual Kennedy gathering. I understand many of you hail from far-flung and exotic locations. Sadly, I do not. My name is Robert Kennedy. I live in a small town north of London with my wife Libby and my 2 children, Henry, who is 4, and Edith, who is 2.
Hello, Kennedy cousins. This is Maureen Kennedy in Connecticut, USA. Hope everyone is safe and sound and wish we could all be together this year, but hopefully next year. still working on how does my Edward Kennedy and Nancy Ryan, both born about 1800 in Tipperary, fit into Andrew and Ellen Gleason from Philip and Nora Callahan from Long Andrew. Thank you, Brian Kennedy and Tom and Donnchadh and Rody and everybody and Catherine for putting this together, and I look forward to seeing you all at the virtual event. Take care. Bye.
Hi there, I'm Sarah Kennedy from St Albans, England. Just wanted to introduce myself and say hello and have a lovely evening. Bye.
Before Chief Rody concludes the gathering, I want to say thank you to a few people for making today possible from the technical side of it. I want to thank Alan Dormer, Leanne Daly, Mike O'Malley and Kevin O'Gorman, and well done to everybody.
Chief Rody back here again. Just to finish up, I would like to invite you to next year's, hopefully, live event in Rare Cross, the first Sunday in July, the 5th of July 2021. And then a final message of thank you to all the committee today, to Leanne here with us and the rest of the crew that helped her out. And thanks to Brian, Donnchadh, Marc, Catherine and Tom, and thanks to Dennis O'Malley. I think it was the throwing in the ball first day out to get this off the ground, and I wish you all a very happy end of the year, and hopefully next year we'll start without Corona. Thank you all.